Hi, I'm Dana, and today I really want to talk about physical health problems alongside being autistic. Because it's one of those things that I've seen more and more people talking about, like various comorbidities and things that a lot of different autistic people experience. And it's something that I've found interesting and want to create more of a discussion about and see more people talk about so I can do that and make it be more of a thing. So that's what this video is going to be. A lot of these, like obviously I make all of my videos from my experience and my views and how I am as an autistic person, so this is purely from one autistic person, some stuff that I've seen on the internet. This is not me speaking for all autistic people or saying that I'm an expert on what it is to be autistic or anything. All of the, like everything on my channel is just thoughts and I reckon and perhaps maybe I think. So with that out of the way, I kind of want to just get straight into it because I really want this to be a discussion because so many of these are things that I mostly experienced in childhood and then sort of seemingly just grew out of because they stopped being issues. And I'm so curious as to if this is how I'm going to figure out what any of them were or even what like some things that I've got going on are. So let's get into it. Headaches. This was the first like thing that I remember ever experiencing as a kid where I was like, why does my body hate me? Like, what is happening? Why is this a thing? And looking back now, I do think that it was probably mostly sensory issues because it was something that I began. I don't remember like when I started school as like a 5-year-old, but I remember like it only being an issue while I was in school, you know, like it was rare that I got headaches while I was at home or when I was like anywhere else really. But I would be sat in school and just like it didn't even creep up on me. It was just like suddenly my head would be like on fire and I would just sit there and not say anything because I didn't know what to like do or say. So I'd get home and like then start crying and be like, I had a horrible headache all day, my head really hurt. And my parents would just sort of be like, why didn't you say anything? You could have come home. And I would be like, I didn't want to like cause an issue. I didn't want to like I really like didn't understand what I was supposed to tell people about and what I wasn't as a kid. One sec, I need to close this blind, sorry. Like I literally broke my wrist in school at one point. I just didn't tell anyone because I didn't realise it was an important thing to tell people. So I for a long, like for a good while just didn't tell anyone about my headaches. And then when I did, my parents initially were very like, okay, whatever. And because it was almost like every weekday, they eventually were like, oh crap, actually we should probably do something. So they took me to the doctors and I don't remember what they did. I know that I went to the doctors about it and they said that I was fine. And I got my eyes tested and they were like, there is a very, very, very minor, tiny chance that she might need reading glasses. So we'll give you something like Volro's prescription and see if that helps at all. So I had about like 3 weeks in school where I wore reading glasses when I was doing any schoolwork and it just made absolutely no difference whatsoever. It was towards the end of high school that I remember having a point when I was like, I haven't had a headache in like a really long time. Like this was happening like near enough daily for like a good majority of my life. And then there was just a point when I was maybe like 15, 16 that I was just like, oh, that hasn't happened in a while. And like I've only really gotten headaches since when it's like hangovers and shit like that. Like I tend to know why I have a headache as an adult, whereas as a kid, like it just happened to me all the time and I never got any sort of explanation or reason for what it was. And like I say, like I kind of think maybe it was sensory issues with like the fluorescent lights and having to focus and all the noise of school and stuff. But it ended, like it stopped happening while I was still in school, so I don't really know. I don't know. And the other big thing that I experienced like as a kid in school that has massively continued is stomach issues. And from what I've like seen online, it is very, very common for autistic people to have various like stomach and gut issues and IBS and things like that. But it's definitely not like nearly anything that severe for me. I am 98% sure at this point that all of my stomach issues are tied to anxiety. And I do think that my anxiety is massively tied to being autistic, so you know you can blame that on the autism in my opinion. I had quite a lot of time off school in maybe like year 3 or 4, so as like a 8 to 10-year-old, because I would just have the worst stomach aches. Like I would wake up with a stomach ache, like I would wake up because of the stomach ache and just be like, I feel sick, my stomach hurts, like I'm basically having stomach cramps and I don't know why, and I'm 8 years old and my stomach really fucking hurts. And my parents were initially very like, of course it does, because you don't want to go to school, do ya? And like, no, I fucking didn't. I was being horrifically bullied. Maybe you should have done something about that. But it was a genuine thing, you know, it was not an excuse. It wasn't me like trying to get out of it. Like I had and have really bad stomach aches when I'm anxious. But there was no consideration towards anxiety of any sort. I was like 12 when I was diagnosed with anxiety, and that was pretty much the first time I'd heard of it as like a thing, you know? So my parents were very like, all right, stop making your excuses, until I started throwing up every day before school, and even like on some of the weekends, because my home life and family life wasn't the best. So if my brothers were going to be around all weekend, or if I was going to have to like do certain things that my family like, required of us, I was very, very anxious and stressed. And I started to just throw up like every fucking morning of my life. And that concerned my parents, and they finally took me to the doctors. And the doctors were like, nah, she's fine. Like, feed her better food, maybe. Like, see if she's like, if there's something going on there. Like, she is physically fine. So my parents like changed my diet up a bit. It didn't help. It didn't do anything. If anything, it made it worse because all my safe foods were like suddenly being taken away from me. And I was being told like even more strictly what I could and couldn't eat, and it was a whole thing. I and it didn't help, and it carried on. And I remember having like an actual like ultrasound at one point as like a 9 or 8 between 8 and the ages of 8 and 10. I had like a full-on ultrasound, and it was real fucking scary. And my parents were very like, fuck's sake, we have to deal with this now, do we? And it's like, I am in pain, I am throwing up most mornings, and you're like annoyed at me for not being. That's a different video, that's a completely different situation. But yeah, I that's massively continued for me. Like, it never really ended. There's just like, I guess I adjusted to the life that I was being forced to live and stopped throwing up so much. But to this day, if I get anxious, I'm going to throw up. I regularly still wake up with stomach aches and pains because I sometimes I am like, I don't know what this is. Like, I will just wake up in the night to throw up, or wake up with like a horrific stomach ache, and I don't know why. But other times I'm like, this is anxiety. I know exactly what's fucking me up here. I know what is going on, and it sucks. It's really fucking shitty, and I don't think it's something that I would experience if it weren't that I'm autistic. One that I'm very thankful has not continued for me really in adulthood is that I constantly had like rashes and skin irritations and just like stuff going on with my skin as a kid. And I do still have some scalp stuff. Like, I think I've mentioned it. I have a very, very flaky scalp. And like, it's not dandruff because it's not like, it's not dandruff. And I've been to the doctors about it multiple times. I've been given all sorts of fucking creams and shampoos and serums and tablets, and been told it's eczema, psoriasis, a fungus infection, or like, I've been told it's everything under the sun, and none of the treatments have ever helped it, and it sort of just retreats and gets worse as and when it fancies on its own. But as a kid, it was all along the front of my scalp here would just be like red and inflamed and a rash and patchy, and I would also get it like around my, like, not the same rash, but I would also get a lot of different like various rashes like around my knees and ankles. I don't know why. And it stopped like probably around when I was a teenager. Like, maybe that's a general standard kid thing. I don't know. I just know it's something that happened to me. And any time I complained about it to my parents, they'd tell me it was a heat rash. But it happened in all sorts of different situations and weathers and temperatures, and you know, like, it didn't seem to be affected by like anything in particular. Like, I'd just get red bumpy skin, and it'd just like stick around for a few days being red and bumpy and kind of sore and itchy, and then it'd go dry, and then like a few weeks later it'd just be gone, and it'd just pop up anywhere all over the shop. And I don't know what made it come, I don't know what made it go, but it stopped happening at some point when I was a teenager, so I don't really care. Maybe it's just the thing that happens to kids. One of the big things, though, that's also continued for me is just aches and fucking pains. As a kid, like, we're talking like a young child, my knees and ankles always cracked. Like, I would have people laugh at me in assemblies when we had to sit up and stand up off the floor. Sit down and stand up off the floor. Because my knees cracked like I was a fucking old person when I was like 6 years old. Like, my knees have always cracked. And along with that, throughout my life, I've also just had bouts of knee pain, and it's another thing that like comes and goes. And I, touch wood, have not had it happen for a good little while, like probably over a year or two now. So I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't happen again. But as a like, from the ages of maybe like 7 to 15, at least once a week, I would just randomly get like really horrible, painful, shooty, stabby pains in my knees. It happened. And every time my mum took me to the doctors about it, because like, I would like, you know, my knees would shake, and I can't walk for a minute, my knees really hurt. My mum took me to the doctors about it, and they constantly said it was growing pains. Forever, that's all they ever fucking told me it was, and I don't think it was, because like I say, like, as much as it happened most often while I was growing, it still happens. Like, it's been a little while now, but it definitely still happens. You know, it's one of those where I'm like, it hasn't happened in a really long. It hasn't happened to an extreme. Like it hasn't happened to the point where I am like, I need to sit down. This really hurts. But I definitely do have it happen like at least once a month. But like it's such a minor like, oh, that was a weird little pain. You know, like it's already gone by the time I've noticed it, so I didn't think about it. But it does actually still happen. And I also constantly have finger and hand aches. Like it is like just a constant achy, like my wrist actually now that I'm actually thinking about it, I'm like checking in with my body. My fingers, my joints, my fingers, my general like hands and my wrists are almost always at least a little bit achy. And it was worse while I was in school because I was using them more. I was writing like all day, every day, and then going home and doing my own like little artsy bits. So I was like a constant hands person as a teenager. And that's not so much now. But I am still someone that like writes a lot and types a lot now and like scrolls a lot now. And I still do a good amount of stuff with my hands. And I quite often notice that they just ache, they just kind of hurt, they're just sort of a bit sore. And it's not like an awful pain, it's not a bad pain, it just is there. And I feel like I've just sort of always had that, which means that like I do have to like think about it and check in and be like, oh, is it there? Because it's always there. Yeah, it's there. But like I'm so used to it, I just don't think about it and notice it, and it's just the way that my body feels. And alongside that, I get right in between my shoulder blades at like the base of my neck sort of area. I get such bad pain sometimes, like it burns sometimes, and I know that that's probably tension and like because I do a lot of my shoulders and constantly have my shoulders up by my fucking ears and round in on myself. Like it's definitely my posture that's like fucking that. But again, that's a pain that I've had for most of my life. I get a lot of jaw aches and pains, and I think some of that's that I move my face more than I necessarily need to when I'm talking. I don't know. I'm too hyper aware of it now. But even when I'm like talking to people in real life, I'm aware that, you know, like if I'm not actively like doing stuff with my face, it doesn't move or do anything, and it doesn't. That translates into my tone. I get like the flat effect, and people don't react to me in the way that I'd like. And I know that it's not the way that people come across. So I do my facial expressions and make sure that I'm doing things, and because it's a constant conscious choice that I'm making to do things with my face muscles, they start to ache and hurt sometimes. Um, And finally, for this part, I get pain sort of like here, and it's something that I've always gotten. I first remember noticing it. I was in the first primary school that I went to, so it was before year 3. So I would have been maybe like 6 or 7. Like within the first 2 years of me going to school, I remember being stood in the playground where we had to line up, and it might have been for the first time in my like memorable life at that point. I like relaxed my face and realized that I'm not frowning. I'm never like, you know, it's not a frown. I just carry a whole lot of tension like in like this part and this part of my like head and forehead. And then when I first like finally relaxed it, I was like, that feels so much nicer. That feels so much better. I think I might constantly be causing myself just a wee little bit of pain in my face by like the way that I hold my facial muscles or something. And I don't notice it until I relax it, and then I'm like, oh, that's aching and it kind of hurts, so it's a bit painful. Now, the last two are a little bit different to the others because one is injuries. Because I don't have a diagnosis of dyspraxia or anything, but I'm a very clumsy person. I pretty much constantly have some sort of cut, scrape, bruise, graze. Like there is pretty much always some sort of open wound on my body because I'm just a clumsy person. I will walk into walls, I will walk into bins, I will walk like if there's something in the way that isn't directly in front of my face, I will walk into it. Even if it is directly in front of my face, I might walk into it. I Unless I am focusing very hard because it's something breakable, I will drop it, whatever it is. Like I very rarely move my laptop from where it sits because I will drop it. I have a really ugly but protective phone case as well as like the little phone screen protectory thing because otherwise I'm dropping it and breaking it. And that goes with my body. You know, like I've got a gnarly scar because I just fell over onto a tree stump when I was a kid. Do you wanna? Oh, it doesn't look that good on camera. I mean, it doesn't look good, but you know, like it's quite a large scar, and it's in like a little triangle because it like flopped open. I broke my wrist falling off a playground set onto like the soft floor that's meant to not let you get hurt. There was a point as a kid that I dropped a knife into my foot, and like I dropped the knife, and I looked down, and I was like, where's it gone? And then when I went to take a step, my foot hurt, so I looked at my foot, and the knife was just in my foot, and my dad just pulled it out and put a plaster on it and was like, they'll be fine. But I feel like I probably should have gotten stitches. But nothing happened, so I was fine, so whatever. But yeah, and that went for me as a kid a lot, and it really, really annoyed me as a kid because I got kind of told off fairly often for getting hurt. Like, there was always the assumption that I'd done something silly to get hurt. And it really annoyed me because, like, the other kids constantly took the piss out of me because I didn't take any risks. I didn't do things. Like, other kids would be, like, on rope swings and jumping out of trees and jumping off swings, riding down, like, this big bit of mud bankment thing that was there for our bikes. Like, other kids they weren't taking risks, they were being kids. But I refused to do it. I was scared. I was anxious. I was like, no, I'll get hurt. Something will go wrong. Like, I refused to do the things that would get me hurt. And then going for a walk through the woods, I'd fall over onto a tree stump and cut my leg open. I'd have to have my friends running back to my mum's house to be like, Dana's been hurt, to drive me to A&E, Like, I really didn't take the same risks that other kids took, and I got all the more hurt for it anyway. And finally, I know this is a mental health one, but I do think that my mental health has led to some of my physical issues and probably could lead to physical issues if I'm not careful. When I say mental health, I do kind of just mean depression, anxiety, because that's what I have experience with. And even though I'm not actually sure I have experience with depression, I think I might have just had autistic burnout, but we don't know for sure. And I was diagnosed with depression. And I definitely have experience with anxiety, I know that for sure. And it's things like if I'm in a setting where it feels uncomfortable to leave to go to the bathroom, I won't. And that applied doubly when I was in school and college, because I know it's not a big deal, but I felt incredibly awkward and embarrassed having to put my hand up and be like, can I go to the toilet, please? And everyone knows that you need to go and pee, and it's disgusting and it's embarrassing, and it's not at all. But it makes me really anxious, so I will sit there and hold it in and not go to the toilet. And that's definitely not good for my something inside. And my entire life I've been told that I've got really high blood pressure, and I've had one doctor after I'd lost a bunch of weight, and it was the first time I've been in the doctors in ages, and he was like, I don't want to be mean, but your blood pressure's the same that it was when you weighed almost double what you do now. Why do you think that is? And I was like, I'm extremely anxious, and when I step foot into the doctor's office, I can hear my heartbeat in my ears because I'm so anxious about being here. And he was like, take some breaths with me, and he walked me through a whole thing, and my blood pressure just went down and down and down. I think it was my blood pressure. The thing he measures with the fucking thing that goes on your arm. And by the time we were done, he was like, yeah, you have a completely healthy blood pressure. And I was like, nice. But I'd always had high blood pressure, and I feel like that's probably not good for my body and insides. I don't know what I'm meant to do about it. And they're the only examples that I have personally, but I feel like there's probably other ones if I thought hard enough about it, to be fair, and I'm sure other people have ones. But this has already been quite a lengthy video for me, and I'm ready to go now. So please do like and subscribe if you like this video. I post on Sundays and Thursdays, so you get new content twice a week. And I also post daily on TikTok if you go over there. I sometimes post on Instagram, and I don't have a Twitter account. None of us do anymore, but you know what I mean. So that will all be linked down below. As well, sorry, that'll all be linked down below, as well as links to my Ko-fi, my Patreon. My Ko-fi and my Patreon, if you would like to pay me some money and support the channel financially. And you can also become a YouTube member if that's your bag, but you don't have to, and there's no pressure as always. So whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I will see you again in a couple of days.